What's up, Infected? Welcome to the Quarantine. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to play a game by the name of Avertigos South China Sky. Now, the rulebook you see here is actually an earlier prototype. I will be teaching you off of the most current rules. This game is currently on Kickstarter, so if you like what you see here in this tutorial, I'll provide a link up in the corner and down in the descriptions that'll take you directly to their Kickstarter video, and it'll provide way more information that I could cover in this tutorial. Another thing I do have to state is everything you see here in this video is a prototype copy of the game, so it is of course subject to change, and I will be only covering the skirmish rules from the rulebook. Now, there are going to be a couple other game modes, but this will just cover the skirmish mode, which is, for the most part, most of the rules. The other scenarios and game modes you can play just add a few extra rules to the game. Now, in Avertigos, you are different airship captains commanding a fleet of different airships, as you see here. Now, as I said earlier, everything you see here is a prototype copy of the game. You're going to have several different components. You have your weapons cards, you have your dice, you have the map border indicators where you can see where the edge of the map is at. You're going to have your actual airship player boards, a measuring stick. Now, the final product of the game is going to have one that's this size, and then another one that is twice the length. Then you're going to have your different airships that you see here that are on sticks that allow them to raise up and lower to show the Z-axis. You're going to have your movement cards and then several attachments to add to your ships. Now, another thing I do need to mention, the bite marks that you see here will not be included in your product. My cat thought this was going to be a really good chew toy. So, disregard the bite marks that you see on some of the sails. Now, first things first, you're going to set up your playing field, and you're going to use the four corners that you see here. And as long as you and your opponents agree on the dimensions of your map, you can really set it to kind of whatever dimensions you would like. Now, the rulebook does recommend a 24 by 34 inch or 24 by 35 inch or 60 centimeter by 90 centimeter playing field. So for the sake of our demonstration here, we will just put the playing field about like this so you can get an idea of how the game plays. Then each player is going to create their fleet. So the player is going to agree on a point value on how much they are going to be allowed to spend on their ships, and then they're going to proceed to build their ships. So when you look at your ship module here, you have your speed, which is 1, 2, 3, and then overspeed. You have height, which is 1, 2, 3, which directly ties into initiative, which in this case is 4, 5, and 6. And then you can store up to 4 action points up here. You have your ship's health, and then how many modules the ship must have in order to be able to leave the docking bay. Now, over here you have the penalties and any extra rules for your ship, such as discard an AP to draw an extra card, or your penalty is -2 hit points, which we'll get into that a little bit later. Now, where that point value comes into play are the modules that you see here. You see the little lip on the side of the board, and it says +2 modules. So you must put one of these modules, or in this case 2 of them, next to the ship in order to kit your ship out. So you see here, you have the coin value of the ship, where the module is going to be placed on your ship's model, which will make sense in a second, how many action points that you can store, the arc that it's allowed to aim at down here, and then the hit points of this module itself. So you're going to, in this case, I have 19 coins on this ship alone. But you have a various arsenal here of weaponry that you're allowed to place on your ship. And they all do various things, and they're all going to be useful at various points throughout the game. And as you see here, my ships are going to be kitted out to 30 points. So of course your opponent would also be kitted out to 30 points. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your ships and you're going to add the modules that you see here, and you're going to add them to your ship, so at a glance you can tell what modules your ships actually have on them, such as this. So this looks like that, and then this looks like that. So this is this ship. So that way it's a little easier to differentiate what ship is what as well while it's on the battlefield. Then starting off, each one of your ships is going to get 2 action points that you're going to put on your main part of the hull. And then you're going to take a red cube and you're going to put it on the 8 marker of your primary health. Then you're going to put a marker on the furthest right health marker. So in this case, it's 4 all the way around for each one of your modules to show that they are all at full health. And then lastly, your ships are each going to get 1 cube on each one of their speed and height marker, and you will deal with those a little bit later, but now your ship is fully kitted out and you're ready to play. Now when starting out, you're going to place your ship toward the back of your ship is along the edge of the playing field. So for example, maybe I will do that because this corner is now touching this edge and this edge is also touching it. So my ships are now ready to go. And of course my opponent would do the same thing. And remember, this battlefield is much, much smaller than you would actually be using in the game. But maybe that's how my opponent starts off, with one in the corner and one right in the middle, and we're ready for ourselves a good old standoff. Now one more thing that I do need to state that I apologize for, each ship actually starts with 4 action points, not only 2. Now once you've done that, each player is going to start their height and their speed at wherever they wish. Now this is very important because the higher your ship is, the higher your initiative. Lower initiatives are going to move first, but higher initiatives are going to act first. So the higher you are, the higher your initiative and the more tactical advantage you have. However, your speed is also very important. Each speed that you have, so for the example in this, if you have 2 speed, you must play 2 cards for this ship's movement, which will make sense later, or for every card you cannot place, you have to pay the penalty down here, which is you have to take 2 damage per card you could not play. So this is very important. So for our example, I'm going to have one of my ships start out as docked and the other one start out as 1, so I will only have to play a single card. Now the last thing you're going to do before you start the game is you're going to deal each player 3 of the movement cards from the movement deck. Now you're ready to play. So as you see here at a glance, you can tell that this ship is starting at height 3 because the little marker here is on the 3rd notch up, and you can physically see how much higher it is than everything else. This ship is starting at height 0 or height 1 because all of its weapons generally aim upwards. At the beginning of the movement phase, before any of the players have played any of their movement cards, which will make sense in a moment, for each ship that they have, they may take 1 action point or 1 card, and any combination of which for each ship. So for example, my 2 ships here, I can choose to draw 2 cards, take 2 action points, or take 1 of each. And now you're ready to do the movement phase. So let's just assume that this ship here is going to start off because it has the lowest initiative. If there's ever a tie between initiative, the players are going to go ahead and roll dice to determine the player initiative, which is going to break any ties involving initiative. And now the players are ready to play. So let's assume that my height 3 here is the one that I can have docked currently, but this one must play 1 card because it has a speed of 1. So what you're going to do is look at your 3 cards here, and any cards that have the bow of a ship must be played as the first card. Now if you don't have one of these cards, as you see here, if I didn't have this blue, any of the cards may be flipped over in order to be played as your first card. After that, you can play any of these cards. So you can play this as your second card if you wanted, but you can play any one of these. However, yellows have a special rule that I'll get to a little bit later. So for example, I can play this card as my first card. Now if you notice, there are 3 little angled spots here on the front of your ship. So you can play this here, you can play this here, or you can play this here, and that's going to dictate, a sharp turn or anything like that. Now let's look at the makeup of one of these cards. So in the top right corner, you're going to have any bonuses for playing this card. You're going to have, of course, whether it's the bow of the ship or not, and you're going to have your alignment dot. So what does that mean? Well, what an alignment dot is if I were to play this card, say it's my first card, and then I had to play 2 different cards. I would take another card and I would align the dot on the bottom of the card that I'm playing with the card that I just played. So you would do it this way. However, there's a few more things on these cards you need to take note of. If you see in the bottom, there are red triangles, which means if you use this card to turn, how far it's allowed to turn. And up here, you have your turn border. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is, taking this card as an example, if I were going to be turning off of this card, I would put the alignment dot on here, as you see, and then I can angle this card as far as I would like, as long as your alignment dot still lines up and this red triangle does not pass over this border. So I could place this way, for example, and that it would be how my ship would slowly turn using the air currents. However, it's very important that if the card has a red line on it like this, you cannot turn with that card. So this is a valid placement. However, this would not be, because this card cannot be used to turn. So, in our example here, maybe I'm going to place this right here, and that is going to be how my ship is going to try to quickly go broadside to be able to use the weapons that are clearly aiming to the broadside of the ship. Now at this point, I've played my ship's single card that I'm allowed to play this turn. However, yellow cards are special. Now you can play yellow cards and they do not count towards your movement, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, because you can never use this card to count as one of your movements. But you could flip it over as a blue card and then it will. So in this case, I would take this card and I would play it maybe to allow myself to turn. Once my movement is over, you're going to pick up your ship from where it's at and you're going to put it at the end of that card row, and then you're going to apply any of the bonuses from your ship. So for example, I get a bonus draw a card, and I would get 2 hit points up to, of course, my maximum hit points. Then these cards would go off to the discard pile, and this ship's movement is complete. You'll continue to do that for each one of the ships in initiative order, with player initiative breaking any ties. So let's assume that this is how our movement phase ended. This ship remained docked, so it did not have to play any additional cards. These ships both moved 1 and maybe used a couple yellow cards, taking any damage where appropriate, and this card, of course, you saw how this one played. However, during the movement phase, you can perform 3 special different maneuvers. You can climb, swoop, or dive. Now to climb, you would play 1 less card than your speed without changing your speed, and you can raise the height of your ship provided you're not already at 3. This initiative change would take place immediately during the action phase. The next thing you could do is swooping. If you are at height 2 or 3, you can reduce your height by 1 and you can add 2 cards to your speed, allowing you to traverse a very far distance on the board. So for example here, if I were to reduce my ship by 1 height and my speed were only 1, I can play 1 card and then 2 additional cards, which in this case would cause a collision, which I'll touch on. Now the last one you can do is called a dive, and it can only be done at a ship on height 3. You can reduce your height all the way down to 1, and it works just like a swoop, except it allows you to play 3 cards additional versus just 2, which could very much allow you to traverse the entire battlefield in a single movement. In the event that 2 ships' bases were to touch, such as this, regardless of the height between them, now you have a collision on your hands. So what you would do is each player involved in the collision would roll 2 dice, and whoever has the higher initiative is going to decide how these are divided up. So you have 2 damage or you have 6 damage. So of course the person with the higher initiative is probably only going to take the 2 damage, and the lower initiative is going to wind up taking the 6. In the event that after you've played your action cards, of course based on your speed, when you pick up your piece and you put it at the end of that card row, if you are outside of the boundary of the map, then you will pick up your piece. You still get any bonuses for the cards that you had laid down, and of course they would get discarded, but then you would put your piece where your nose would touch anywhere along that edge of the map, and that ship will no longer participate in that action phase. However, it still can be shot at, so it's very important that you do not leave the boundary of the battlefield. At the end of the movement phase, each player is going to draw 1 card for every card that they played that was either a blue, purple, or red. Note you do not draw additional cards for yellows that you played. So in this case, if I only played these 2 cards, I would be drawing 1 additional card at the end of the round. Then after you've drawn your cards for each one that you've played, if you climbed with any of your ships, for each ship that climbed, you would then draw 1 additional card. Then you may draw additional cards for each action point you would like to spend. Keeping in mind there's a 7-card hand limit, but the bonus cards for climbing and action points may exceed the 7-card hand limit. After all of that is done, you proceed to the action phase. Now during the action phase, you are going to perform action cycles. Now an action cycle is starting with the highest initiative. They're going to act first from highest to lowest. Of course, player ties or player initiative is going to beat any and all ties. So for this example, my height 3 ship would go first, but I'm going to show you on a player board with my height 1. Let's assume he got to act last in each cycle. Now during the cycle, each player, again starting with highest to lowest, is going to choose to take a single action. Now there's various actions you can take. And those actions consist of some tactical maneuvers, which would be you can change your height by 1 for 1 simple card, which of course does cost an action card, or an action point, so you would get rid of an action point, get rid of a simple card, which of course is a blue card, so this could just be turned over back like this and discard that. You can take a simple movement, again costing you an action point, and you'll be able to place a blue card in any direction that you want in order to try to get a little sneaky move in. You can swoop by, of course, paying 1 action point and 2 simple cards. You would decrease your height by 1 as well. And you would be able to dive by using 3 of the cards, of simple cards, and, of course, 1 action point. So it allows you to do those special maneuvers outside of the movement phase to maybe get you in a better tactical position. Now another action you can take is I can spend any number of my action points, so for example I will do 2 in this case, in order to put 2 dice on the squares that you see here on this weapon. That means I'm loading these weapons ready to fire. Now you need to take note that here you see 2 black boxes and 1 red box. You cannot fill the red box in the same turn you filled the black box. So I couldn't pay 3 and fill these up all the way. Because what this means is the red box is an aimed shot. Now if you ever get an aimed shot, you get to dictate where that damage is going to go. Versus if I were to just shoot now, it's kind of a snapshot, my opponent decides where all of this damage is going to go. Now, once you've loaded a weapon, as you see here, you can then fire, which does not count as an action during the action step. It would be kind of a snapshot. So I throw these into the weapon here, and then I would declare I'm going to fire at this ship. So you're going to take your range measurement stick. Depending on the weapon, different weapons will have different ranges. Keep in mind that because this is a prototype, this is the only measurement stick that I do have. So you're going to place the flat part here against your ship, and if this stick touches the enemy ship, as it does here, then I would be able to hit that. They are in range. Take note, some weapons shoot broadside, some weapons shoot front, some weapons only shoot one side or the other, which requires an action point to swap which side that it's going to be on. In my prototype copy, all of the weapons fire, both left and right of broadside. So once you've fired your weapon, you would take the dice that are loaded in and you would roll them and you would deal, in this case, 6 damage because I have a 2 and a 4. So because the shot is not aimed, my opponent would get to decide how that damage is going to be divided up. If I had decided not to shoot and then it goes back around and comes back to me, I can spend 1 action point and I can aim the weapon. Now I'm rolling 3 dice and I can declare my shot, so I would roll these and then I get to decide where this 8 damage goes. But that single turn that it took for you to aim that weapon could mean life or death in Avertigos. Now there's a couple things that we need to take note of here. As you see down here, there's the arcs of fire. So in this case, if it were my level 3 ship and my opponent is on height 1 and my height 3 ship is much higher, I wouldn't be able to hit it because I can hit the same level and 1 level lower or 1 level higher with this weapon. However, some weapons are specifically designed to be used at height 3, as you see here. I can hit same level or up to 2 levels lower. Now this is going to continue over and over until all players have decided they do not want to take any more further actions. So of course he would go first, and let's just assume the player order or the player initiative is going to allow this to go clockwise. We all take an action, we all take an action, we all take an action. Okay, he passes. He wants to maybe hold on to some action points. But then he's going to take an action, he'll pass, he'll pass. So it goes back around to him. Does he want to take another action? No, he passes. So we just played, what, 4 action cycles there. The action phase is now complete because everybody has now passed. At which point you will go back to the beginning of the movement phase. Each player will be allowed to draw, 1 card per ship or 1 action point or a combination. Then you would continue playing the game, playing movement cards to get your ships into proper position and blowing the crap out of each other. Once a module has taken enough damage to max out its hearts down here at the bottom, then this ship or this module can no longer be used. Now, throughout different scenarios and different gameplay modes, you may be able to repair these modules, but you're still in the fight even though you've lost this module. However, once your ship's hull has been depleted below 1, then that ship is removed from the conflict and can no longer be used. Once all of your opponent's ships have been removed and you are the only one with ships left on the table, you are declared the winner. And that is how you play Avertigos. I hope this video was helpful in teaching you how to play the game. If you like what you saw here, make sure you check up here in the corner and down in the description. That'll take you over to the Kickstarter, and again will provide way more information than I could possibly cover in the game. The things that I didn't cover here, such as the various gameplay modes where you have villages and stuff, the game does have a lot more. What I've covered here is purely the skirmish mode. So if you have any comments, make sure you leave those down in the description. I hope you enjoyed the video, I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you guys next time in the Kwarenteen.